Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
My name's Ed Piskor.
And I'm Tom Scholey.
Today we're going to look at this classic alternative comic, The Playboy, by Chester Brown, originally serialized in Yummy Fur. Lots to unpack on this one. Before we dive in, though, Ed, tell us about Red Room.
Red Room Comics, man. Murder on the dark web for fun and profit is the name of the game in the Red Room universe. And we have 4 issues of the Antisocial Network on the stands as we speak. So if you see an issue, scoop that sumbitch up, man. If you missed an issue, because they are selling out quick, we have a trade paperback coming out in early November 2021, man. The collected Red Room, the Antisocial Network, with about 70 pages of extra material, including director's commentary, 32-page quick and dirty comic. That was kind of a first draft. Process junkies will dig that one, man, because that's sort of like my writing process, man. It's to basically just draw the comic. Learned that shit from Tom. Sketchbook sections, a lot of extra stuff. Also, serializing the next wave of Red Room comics called Trigger Warnings. On my Patreon. So for $3 you get the archive there. You get all of the Antisocial Network for $3, and I put new strips up every Tuesday. All these links are in my link tree in the description below this video.
Tom, how about you? Where can people find your latest, greatest comics?
Go to Marvel Comics, and you got Fantastic Four Grand Design. It's the story of the Fantastic Four, all in one volume from start to finish. Anything you ever wanted to know about the Fantastic Four, you can find out here. And it's also got a reprint of This Man, This Monster in the back, recolored by Ed. And we got the man himself, Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. It's the story of Jack Kirby's life in one volume. His whole hero's journey, his whole life's arc. Done in pencil, the same medium that he used. Oh, there's Captain Atom, yeah.
That's awesome. You can join me on patreon.com/Jim Rugg, where you can download my out-of-print zines and mini comics. You can see my original art and process, especially for Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive. You can kind of see how I put together these stories from beginning to finished piece. It's a lot like what we talk about here on Cartoonist Kayfabe, a lot of craft talk, but focused on my own practice and my own comics. You can also find Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive wherever you buy comics, in comic shops everywhere, bookstores or online. And join me again on patreon.com/Jim Rugg. But we are going to talk about one of the first alternative comics that I kind of got into was Yummy Fur by Chester Brown. And one of his first acclaimed stories, at least his autobio stories, was The Playboy. This was originally serialized in 3 issues of Yummy Fur, issues 21, 22, 23, before Drawn and Quarterly started publishing these things, by the way. Lots to unpack here, and we'll kind of get into some different stuff as we go through these issues. But, we're going to switch from issue to books, because this is a story that has been collected several times in different formats, and I think there's some interesting stuff to note there.
This is my first issue of Yummy Fur, and I got it a long time ago at a flea market.
That's funny.
First and only issue for a long, long time.
A weird series to find at a flea market. But we'll start with number 21 in comic book format. This is 1990 to give some context of when this is happening. And, you see right away, like, this does not look like your typical 1990 comic book.
Yeah, I mean, if this was a typical 1990s comic book, we would not be seeing this guy. All of this material would be a caption at the top of the panel, and different imagery would be happening. Sometimes this little dude is in the image with young Chester. This is the interlocutor. This is the guy who's carrying us through the story. Modern day Chester.
Yeah, exactly.
With bat wings.
And looking back on this story of, Chester Brown's early experiences with pornography in the form of Playboy magazine. So it's a middle, teenage Chester Brown who is interested in girls, but probably not capable of really going out with girls yet at this point, but does get hold of a Playboy.
Very curious. Like, I wonder if just Canadian law is different, because you have to be 18 to get nudie mags here in the States, man. And he was 15 years old with the ability to just go get the stuff. And, I'm sure he didn't look like a grizzled man. Like, something tells me he's a late bloomer.
It was probably like the 70s, too. So it's like things are a little more like loosey-goosey back then.
Every one of my friends tells stories about how their parents would give them money and be like, go to the store and get me cigarettes or beer or whatever it is. And it's like, it wasn't too hard to have that done. And that would have been in the 80s. I linger on this page just to point out Church. a big part of young Chester Brown's life, and he would go on and adapt several gospels from the New Testament in Yummy Fur and some of his other comics. So religion, obviously a big part of his life, and something that comes up as he's like sorting out his feelings for pornography and his reaction to it.
I choose to read this like it's a prequel to My Friend Dahmer, and Durf is not the focus of this thing, if you know what I'm saying.
This little character is kind of like Lucifer, like from like the Sandman comics and stuff. Kind of like the long hair and
That's funny.
Chester Brown, man, he really was trying to hang out onto that rock star hair for as long as he could.
He's such a good cartoonist. I love like the hand shaking, the magazine shaking, the money shaking as he's like trying to make this transaction happen.
And just going across town
Yeah.
to get this Playboy in hopes that he doesn't run into anybody he knows. And of course he does, man. And not only did he run into some people he knows, but I think these people live like across the street or something from him. It's this kind of shit, man, where that bag is heavy, weighing mad heavy.
and they tower over him. That is part of like the portrait of a serial killer kind of thing here, of that kind of thinking of like, okay, I can't stay in my local area, I gotta make like a random pattern for my
I feel
attacks.
bad at how much we're gonna point at this is serial killer 101.
And we are not saying that Chester is any of those things.
Not at all.
man.
This is a flight of fancy.
Right. His cartooning, though, like that's a great panel where he's looking up and
Exactly,
really
that's
emphasizes them, but it reinforces it. The next panel, again, Chester Brown still looking up. The next panel, now it's their point of view looking down at him. Like those are subtle things to do as a drawer, to put that perspective on, but consistently carrying through and just how small he feels in this exchange. Even there, like almost drawing where it's impressionistic drawing of like he's way smaller than it would be if you were doing a realistic drawing, but that's the whole page is that effect.
It makes me think of that one scene in Fast Times at Ridgemont High where the little rat is taking Jennifer Jason Leigh on a date to that like hurdy-gurdy like German restaurant, and the table is as high as the bottom of their chairs, and they sit them on these super giant chairs to just make them look so tiny, like they're playing grown up or something.
All right, man. So here we go. The panel that everybody remembers, right? From the two hands technique.
Yeah.
Now, okay, a couple things. Like all this talk about serial killer stuff. Now, when a book like this, when it came out, and probably like a lot of like your early readings of it, you're probably taking it at face value. Like this is autobio. There's no way, he's going to lie. This is all truth. But kind of looking at it now, it's like, I see all of these as literary devices, and that this could possibly be, all kayfabe, a completely invented narrative. And so my thought about this technique here is more like, oh, that is excellent symbolism for this idea of like this religious aspect and this little altar that he sets up with the Playboy as the Bible. And so, his act is prayerful. So of course, like it makes sense from like a literary symbolism way. Now, whether or not it's actually factually true is immaterial, but
Let's get Chester Brown to weigh in with his notes from the back of this latest edition. He says, when this was originally published, a lot of guys were puzzled by my two-handed masturbation technique. Apparently most guys use only one hand. I grew up only using two hands. As a young adult, I heard masturbation jokes that helped me figure out that other guys were using one hand, and I began to try it. These days, I go back and forth, sometimes using one hand, sometimes two.
Now, again, that could be kayfabe, too. Like, he's reinforcing this, like, persona that he's created.
I do like the prayer hands thing, though, because that does fit really well in this whole story, and not something that had occurred to me until you just mentioned it, Tom. Would be interesting if that were the case, if it was just the visual, making this story kind of work a little better for him.
Well, a lot of like psychotherapy is closely related to literary readings. Like there's a lot in common. So maybe we're making these literary observations, or maybe these are observations that like a therapist would make about somebody's actual life.
He's buying these Playboys, without looking at them too closely in the stores, just kind of trying to get them out the door as quick as he can. And he buys one that has a black Playmate, and his reaction to it is not a good reaction. And then he spends a bunch of time ruminating on, is he this terrible racist because he didn't like the black Playmate of the month? So guilt is the main thing that comes through on this. Every way you could feel guilty about this interaction with Playboy, he's experiencing it.
Yeah, and it's all those curses too, man, of jerks off, finishes and is completely disgusted, full of guilt. So he's gonna just go hide this thing, get it out of his life. Can't even dispose of it in the house because
Bury
it's
the body.
possible. But then the nutsack fills up again in a couple of hours the next day. That's the curse, man. You gotta do it again.
Well, this is like he's buried the body, and now he's realizing he's into necrophilia. Dig it back up.
All right, this is the end of chapter 1. I'm going to switch to the first trade paperback to go through the next chapter. But pretty amazing comic. You know, he had just started doing autobiography a couple of issues before this, and it was pretty mundane stuff. I liked those issues. One of them was about how he would put together the stories, which was really exciting, you know, as a cartoonist. But constantly, like, he's doing this stuff that looks totally different.
He said that years before doing the Playboy, he got hold of Joe Matt did one strip that was in some kind of anthology, and it just described Joe Matt's interactions with porno at the time.
And it was short. It was like 1 page.
Yeah. And it was also like, the conceit was now he has a girlfriend, so he doesn't need pornography,
Right.
which is the biggest joke ever if you ever read Peep Show comics, because that's all they're about. Post girlfriend, I guess, man.
Probably during, too. I have a feeling that the girlfriend didn't keep the porn away.
But this stuff is very influential stuff. Like Ed Brubaker, who you know from Winter Soldier and millions of Marvel, DC, and his Image works. He had that comic called Low Life, and it was this kind of vein, and it was about putting cards on the table in similar ways. Like he's a little bit more alpha energy than Chester Brown, so it ain't about guilt over jerking off or whatever, man. But I do remember there was even a Low Life strip where he sent submissions to Fantagraphics and draws his like little Chester Brown version of Gary and Kim, who were criticizing him for being too yummy furish.
Hard not to be. I mean, this it happens all the time. Like, you see how many people have come up and they become Mike Mignola clones or something.
Whole generation of
Totally.
navel gazing, woe is me, Charlie Brown fucking comics.
These things were revolutionary in American comics, comparing just the way this is reprinted in the trade paperback edition, which Drawn and Quarterly did publish, versus, you can see like these panels are your panels to compare. So much bigger reproduction of the artwork in the trade paperback.
And this like strategy of like taking a comic book page and then making it like 1 or 2 panels per page. Anytime I've encountered that as a reader, it's always been a super enjoyable, really natural, great reading experience. And you think about it from like our perspective as creators, it's kind of like a good, you get a lot of mileage for your buck. But like, I still resist doing it in my own work, even though I enjoy it as a reader, and it would save me a lot of headache. So
Yeah, it's interesting. The third book, we're going to look at yet another iteration of how this is presented. It's interesting because, like, today, this is the world now. Like, if you're going to read it on a phone, 6 panels on a page is not going to go onto your phone screen very well, but 1 panel will, or 2, or, stacking like a column of single panel widths is how you read on a screen like that. All right, so we've abandoned our Playboy magazines. We've hid them out in the woods, but it's a school holiday. And as you say, Ed, Chester Brown, you're going to have your needs.
He has one extra day. He has a 3-day weekend, man, so he's going to get raw, making kindling.
So he's got strategies for this. In this case, he's just ripping out the pages that he's interested in and saving them.
curating.
This is also a great origin story of like how those woods Playboys get there, because I found them before.
Everybody has.
Yeah, and there were also like, man, if you go into my old comic boxes, there might still be like little ripped out like titties and stuff from like 1990s Playboys that I, with my own Catholic guilt, like hid in between long boxes, like between backing boards and a Scott Lobdell X-Men comic or some shit.
This is like his own private stash at this point.
And look at how old and mangy and like probably full of mold the old one is.
Super gross.
Yeah, worms crawling through it.
As if the porn isn't bad enough to begin with, like what he's putting it through.
Yeah.
And then like taking it and leaving it. Oh, Definitely not helping it.
Just thinking and dreaming of Playboys.
Little Annie Fanny finds that. This gets fun too because he gets into some of the article side of Playboy. I mean, compared to other porn, Playboy pretty mild, but known for its high quality of art and writing.
I don't think this piece is in the last in the newest iteration.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. Although I think he references Little
yeah.
Annie Fanny in there, but that's kind of cool to see that make an actual appearance.
Some of the things that happen when you are breaking up these like 6-panel pages and putting 2 on a page is you get weird tangents and stuff, and he will redraw things.
Yes. And then our big moment where it's gone.
Yeah.
Somebody's on to him. They found his stash, and he's so paranoid looking around. Walk away quick.
That hair, man, looks so greasy.
It feels like this is a moment out of a movie, like a heist movie, where like things have gone wrong and you just got to drop it and walk away, like Heat or something.
Yeah, that's what makes me wonder if he's like maybe subconsciously or consciously using the conventions of, you know, serial killer stories or crime stories or something.
Like
you know?
like reality TV isn't reality. Like it's kind of hard to you know, be completely faithful to real life events, and memory doesn't even work accurately anyhow.
He gets too much change and he's honest. He's a good guy. Chester Brown has to give the change back.
Yeah, and has to give her quarters out of that dirty hand.
Well, it's I guess like occult compensation or whatever. He does a good deed so he can do a bad deed later.
This guy. Just be regular, dude.
He had
This
no idea
guy.
that's what he was going to be scrutinized for.
Jesus.
No objections to him being into pornography, but all of his techniques are what.
Well, who isn't?
I mean, usually like the most interesting parts of a work are not the ones that the creator thought were going to be the most interesting parts.
This reminds me, he's pointing out this well-endowed woman in like the flesh between her boobs. It reminds me of Dave Cooper's Ripple, where like it's this like, what's the nuance that you're responding to, the detail? And I think artists are especially suited for that kind of like, I hate to say critical analysis, but like that really close, like scrutinizing the visuals.
And this is interesting because this is modern day Chester saying gross, man. So like it's super incel energy.
Back into the woods, this time at night. Love the black background for the pages.
Yeah.
That was something that I hadn't really seen for, you know, like comic book choices. Like Spawn would have black backgrounds, but the page layout was so different it didn't feel like this.
Yeah, a famous one would be that Shazam Monster Society of Evil collection has like a black background.
I didn't know that. That must have been added to the collection.
It was in the
It would have
collection,
been
yeah,
printed
not the
that way.
original comics.
That's interesting. I wish I had that collection.
We're working on getting a video of that together.
This is a great panel, you know, with the silhouette behind him of somebody seeing him in action. It's such out of like a horror movie.
It really is, man. It's like, especially the way, I mean, I don't know what his religion is, but Catholicism is like, not only can God like read your thoughts, but like he sees everyththing.
He can read your thoughts and he'll hold them against you too.
Yeah.
You can go to hell for an evil thought as
Right.
easily as an evil deed. I feel like guilt is maybe like kind of like something that like all religion has in common, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's fair.
This was tastefully done, actually, man, because there's no other protrusions or things that one might draw in such an image. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
He's being honest there.
It's neat to see panels, you know, like these kind of panels too, where these are, you know, it's not the first autobio comic, but definitely it wasn't the popular genre in North American comics that it's become. And like trying to wrestle with like some of the imagery and what other panels are you showing? How are you showing passages of time or emotional states? It's really interesting to see him working through those ideas.
This like door and like we're getting into Bernie Wrightson territory in terms of like the rendering and stuff.
He's so fun because like he'll redraw old comics, you know, like it's a guy that knows that language and history and stuff. You know, the way he draws is obviously a little bit different. But
Yeah, by old comics, you're not talking Yummy Fur, but you're talking like classic issues of like Wonder Woman panels. and stuff.
Right. Yes. Old monster comics like from the 50s and 60s, Batman comics, you know, just all these kind of things that I was always surprised when I would see him drawing or redrawing those kind of things because it's like, dude, you do these. They're so far above an old superhero comic, but
You got to start
not
somewhere.
necessarily. I think this centerfold makes an appearance in I Never Liked You. I'm pretty sure. My first, literally the first con I ever set up at, it was in like Playboy Row. Yeah. So there was like a 90s Playmate, an 80s Playmate, and a 70s Playmate. And I swore it was the Playmate from I Never Liked You. But who knows? I mean, that was 20 years ago now. 20 years plus.
I do remember the one lady that was next to you. She had a super giant line. She was a penthouse chick. Glory M. Gilbert what was her name. And she was charging guys $30. She had blank business cards, size things, man. She would put lipstick on her nipple, press the card up to it, sign it, and charge these guys like $30 or $40 for it. Her line was like outside the thing. And then that year, because the ads for the convention showed like Spider-Man and talked like toys, comics, like this kind of stuff, like a religious, like a Christian organization like had a field trip to the con, and then they're seeing like Everett Hartsoe, like my brother saw his first vagina just like at the Everett Hartsoe booth with this like goth model lady, and her G-string was all to the side and shit.
I think I was across from them.
Yeah, and they had to change their whole deal. Like, so much weird stuff happened in town because Ides had to move.
Yes.
Because of like these religious people, like in their relationship with comics as for kids and stuff, and like the con had to change its whole culture. Crazy times.
All right, so we are now into the third issue, starts around here. Chester Brown, his latest plan is to burn the book, the magazine, and when he throws it into the fireplace, I don't know if you've ever tried burning magazines. They don't burn. You know, like the outside pages burn, but I mean, you've got a 200-page magazine. Playboy in its heyday was a thick magazine, and now he's stuck in the family fireplace with a Playboy that, what can you do with it?
So, Jim, you've done this.
I burnt magazines. First thing you might notice, relettered. Relettered for this edition.
That might be redrawn.
It might be.
I'll hold it open.
Yeah, in this format, it's like it would be like Peanuts or something would be in a similar format.
Yeah, sure. It's not redrawn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
He's known for often drawing like two of each panel.
That is
and
true.
then picking the right one. I don't know if he was doing it back at this time period or not, but you know, like redrawing a panel is that's no big deal for him.
Yeah.
So it's possible like a lot of this stuff could be redrawn, reworked. As you said, that Annie Fanny panel doesn't make the cut. I think things are rearranged when they're collected. This
would be what the manga would call retouched, where it's relettered and he has to compensate for the stuff that he whites out.
The only thing that didn't burn was the spine, so he's up like all night worrying about it.
I do.
It's such a torture that he puts himself through.
And then like the real conceit, like now I know his mom had issues and stuff like that, but the thing that like you just never think about is like your parents care about your jerking off as much as you want to hear them fucking. Like, just nobody wants to deal with any of that, man. So don't trip.
I love this part. He goes from tearing the pictures out, but he doesn't want them to be torn or anything. So now he's removing the staples to pull out the pages that he wants.
Also, here's the thing,
That's
too.
such a cartoonist.
He's buying some of these Playboys probably 3 to 4 times because he's also like he's accumulating stacks, and then different things are happening. The family moves, like different stuff happens, and he has to throw them away. And he does that 3, maybe 4 times.
Burying them?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are several of these issues that he talks about buying 4 times.
And imagining neighbors with binoculars.
That's the thing, like, maybe, you know, if you know, his parents found out about this, sort of, they'd freak out, they'd beat him up, or what, you know, who knows. But at the very least, a lot of this guilt is sort of self-created. It's like you're imagining, you know,
his
what
mother
other
dies,
people's reactions would be.
And so right after she dies, now he's imagining her in heaven, watching him do this.
Arms folded. So disappointed.
Hugh Hefner, of course, you know, found out about this comic, pretty highly acclaimed and stuff. And I think he wrote to Chester Brown. I was looking for the letter, but I don't know that it's ever seen print, but I think they've both talked about it and how Hugh Hefner reacted to like the shame, you know, that he was feeling, and the whole idea of, at least Hugh Hefner's version of, you know, Playboy is like this sexual liberation, like it should be free of the shame part. And to see this, you know, caused him to write a letter to reach out to Chester Brown. You know, he was so, I don't know if alarmed is the right word, but, you know, he certainly had a reaction to this book. to the point that he reached out to him. And of course, Hugh Hefner, known for his love of cartoons and comics and stuff. So that probably didn't hurt either.
Hey, Chester, loosen up. Just loosen up a little.
And there's more of your serial killer stuff as Chester Brown wants to go get a Playboy and his little brother wants to tag along to the store, to pick up some comics or whatever. And it's like, no, you can't come along. I need some alone time. Very accurate in that part. Doing this at like people's houses that he goes to, like his grandmother's house. That seems like a bold move, especially this position.
Well, to get the thrill, you have to up the stakes.
I guess so.
He winds himself in such knots that he makes himself throw up.
Yeah, it's very very tortured, his reaction to all of these things. But then he starts to find like back issue dealers for them, as he gets into moves to Toronto and has greater access. This is where it comes into like rebuying the same issues over and over again. Having a whole box of them that's affected whenever he moves and doesn't want somebody to find it. Or there's a story in here where he helps a friend move and the dresser, the friend doesn't want to take drawers out of the dresser, but it's so heavy. And he's finally like, we got to take the drawers out. And there's like his penthouse collection.
I have this box back here, like with all the Wizards, 75 issues of Wizards. It's the heaviest, that slick coated paper is heavier than newsprint.
It is. So he has a girlfriend, and this gets into talking about porn and Playboy with her and her reaction to that,
which is so antiquated at this point because, 8-year-old boys have seen the craziest porno that took us, till we were in college or something to find. So the world is just totally different, and all that shame. It's I feel like every guy and girl just expects that. Their partner looks at stuff because it's just right there at the click of a button.
Yeah, it's a story-wise, I feel like this stuff is, like I said, a little bit tepid compared to, I'm sure, what people could be talking about with porn today. Coming up, a kid encountering porn or whatever. A very different world, but I think it's more about how significant this comic was at the time.
Yeah, sure.
And then, like I said, these format changes to me are really interesting because you get to this point. This really could be a phone screen. Each of these pages is about your it's a little bit bigger than a phone screen, but it's approximately that size. It's certainly the same ratio.
Yeah, you know what, man? The relettering is necessary because this is reduced imagery where the other trade paperback is blowing up the imagery compared to the way it was printed in the comics. So, this lettering might not look so great when it's reduced down to the very slight sizes that we have here. So I think that was probably a major requirement to do the relettering.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff with the girlfriend, it's an epilogue, so it may have been added in the trade paperback, but is worked in, as a bigger part of this story. So that's another thing I find interesting with these collections is him revisiting it and repackaging it. People have written about Yummy Fur and the serialization of a graphic novel and making a graphic novel, and that little bits of editing and tweaking and reworking in order to make it work in these different formats that you're printing in. He's one of those guys early on that did it. Dan Clowes would do that, right? Where he would mostly maybe cleaning up some stuff that bothered him or whatever. But the repackaging and redesigning a little bit here and there to make it fit this is a graphic novel now. Let's make it fit that way. I think he was an early guy that did that. So, interesting work. Like I said, one of the first alternative comics that I found, so it stands out to me. And the final piece in here are his notes. And, we've alluded to this with other comics where we wish they were annotated the way he does this. Very reminiscent of an Alan Moore and, things like From Hell, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, some of these works that have this kind of annotations. And so that's what you get in the back. Panels that have been removed or redrawn, talking about that stuff. And then just giving a little bit more insight into various scenes, characters, things of that nature.
Yeah, I'm picturing a Fantastic Four grand design done like this with 2 panels per page where it's the
good Lord, man. It would be much taller than it is wide or tall.
Exactly. A chode. Super fun. Kayfabers, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. What's out there, Jimmy?
Join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can download my out-of-print zines and mini comics. You can see original art, scripts, process of how I make comics like Street Angel, Plain Janes, Octobriana, and much more at patreon.com/JimRugg.
Tom?
Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, Fantastic Four Grand Design, and check out my YouTube channel, Total Recall Show. And October, I'm doing Jacktober, where there's different drawing prompts for different, Jack Kirby related things.
Red Room Comics in the Wild, trade paperback for the Antisocial Network, collecting the first 4 issues of the comic, coming out November 9th, I believe. Get it while you can. It has about 70 pages of extra material on top of what you've already seen in the comic books. If you want to keep reading Red Room, I'm serializing the next wave of Red Room comics on my Patreon, patreon.com/headpisscore. $3 get you the archive there. It contains all of the Antisocial Network issues, a free PDF of the free Comic Book Day comic, more than 150 pages worth of stuff for $3. All these links in my link tree in the description below.
You can subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Give them those marching orders and we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.